Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello everyone. Today we will study and discuss the poem Easter 1916 by William Butler Yeats. The poem was written by Irish poet William Butler Yeats to commemorate the Easter uprising of 1916, in which Irish nationalists led a revolt to win independence from British rule. The leaders of the uprising were eventually executed, and Yeats' poem balances criticism of the rebellion and its political extremism with an admiration for the devotion and courage of the rebels. The poem. I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces from contour or desk among grey 18th century houses. The speaker begins here these 4 lines. The speaker begins by describing how they used to encounter them, the men and women he will later identify as the Irish rebels who died during the Easter Rising. At the end of the day, their faces might reveal some internal agitation or strong emotion. But the speaker first saw them only in the context of ordinary, everyday life, coming home in the evenings from jobs in shops or offices, meeting the speaker on the streets of Dublin outside the grey stone 18th century buildings. The next lines, I have passed with a nod of the head, or write meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite meaningless words. The speaker would bravely acknowledge them with a nod of a meaningless small talk just to be polite. And thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe to please a companion around the fire at the club. Here, even while he was talking to them, he would already be thinking of some way to make fun of them while talking to one of his own friends later at their bush club. Being certain that they and I but lived where motleys were, all changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. The speaker had nothing more serious on his mind than a joke, because he thought that they all were just living regular, unimportant lives. Now, though everything is totally different, some event has occurred that was highly destructive but also helped bring about profound change. The Easter Uprising of 1916 happened because the British had previously promised the Irish that they could have the freedom to control their own country. But in the subsequent developments of World War I, they reneged on that promise. The Irish were understandably upset, and this set in motion the events which led to an uprising. Irish leaders banded together in solidarity to demand what had been promised to them. The English reacted with force, executing leaders of the uprising, some of whom were friends of Yeats. There is a detachment and sense of despair in the first stanza. As the speaker notes the lack of connection he forms with these people, offering only mocking tales as the source of half-hearted entertainment. He thinks they live as a motley crowd, all as different as Catholics and Protestants, educated and not, yet they are all Irish at their cores. Suddenly, all is changed. Yeats uses oxymoron in the terrible beauty that follows. Oxymoron, a figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear in conjunction. Terrible beauty. Easter 1916 was written to elegize some of the Dubliners who died during Ireland's Easter Rising of 1916, all of whom were resistant Republicans, well known to Yeats. The poem's primary theme is a new birth, as characterized by its refrain, "A terrible beauty is born." Look, some of these leaders were good friends of William Butler Yeats. Yeats admits that these men were brave and that they will probably be remembered forever in Irish history. And if there's one thing Yeats loves, it's Irish history. The oxymoron, terrible beauty, might be interpreted in several ways. It could mean the awakening of Irish national consciousness and unity, which had diminished somewhat in the first years of the 20th century and would be wrinkled by the harsh response of British authorities to the events of Easter 1916. It could refer to enthusiastic, nationalistic feelings that politically cautious Yeats feared might be compelling good people to give up their lives in pursuit of a cause that might be won through a peaceful means. We move to themes of the poem: heroism and bravery. In Easter 1916, the speaker is moved to admire the heroism and bravery displayed by the Irish rebels in trying to throw off British rule, even though he didn't wholly admire or agree with the rebels beforehand. It's worth noting that the poet himself, historically, was also critical of extreme nationalism and didn't initially support the violence of the Easter Rising. Questioning violence. So Yeats believes that the people who sacrificed themselves for the Irish cause are ennobled by their efforts. He also questions the wisdom of fighting with violence. He asks at the end of the poem whether the death was necessary, as England will continue their policies in spite of people's sacrifices. Here, the oxymoron terrible beauty, which appears several times in the poem, expresses Yeats' divided mind. He at once celebrates the heroism of those who died for the cause of Irish independence and questions the wisdom of this sacrifice and whether it was necessary. Now we finished from analyze and study this poem, Easter 1916, which was written by the Irish poet William Butler Yeats. Thank you and goodbye.